Get running this fall at Dunkin' with $2 medium iced coffees from 2 to 6 p.m. Try any of Dunkin's delicious iced coffee, like their signature original blend. Or treat yourself to mocha, caramel, or the fall favorite, pumpkin. Always freshly brewed, made just the way you like it. Make time for happy hour and enjoy a $2 medium iced coffee from 2 to 6 p.m. Washington, D.C. runs on Dunkin'. Participation may vary. Limited time offer. Exclusions apply.
Hear that? That's the sound of someone trying to steal your crypto. Every day, thousands of hackers online are doing the same. That's why Arculus uses air-gapped cold storage technology to protect your assets. Using our keycard and wallet app to form a protective barrier, Arculus insulates you from hackers and puts control of your digital assets back in your hands. Order the first truly air-gapped crypto wallet at getarculus.com.
As a listener of this show, you can get a 30-day free trial membership to an Audible Premium Plus membership. That's a $14.95 value, which includes 1 credit, good for any premium selection titles you like, including new releases, and that is yours to keep. But during that 30-day trial, you can also check out the new Audible Plus catalog, which features podcasts, audiobooks, guided wellness, and Audible originals. Listen all you want, no credits needed. You'll also get a friendly email reminder before your trial ends. Right now, I'm listening to John Arezzi talk about his life in pro wrestling with the New York Mets and in the music business. If you've been listening to this show over the years, you know John is a friend of the show and has lived a fascinating life, hosting a wrestling radio show similar to this podcast in the late 80s and early 90s. And he's done wrestling convention promotions and also promoted shows. He's got stories to tell, and boy, does he tell them in his book. And you can get that with your 1 credit for free right now. Go to audible.com/Wade or text Wade to 500-500. Pick any book you want. Pro wrestling, sports, politics, nonfiction, fiction. Learn about World War I. That's a book I'm currently listening to with my Audible membership. It's called The First World War. I know quite a bit about World War II, far from an expert, but I didn't know a lot about World War I. And I was just talking to some family members recently about how different World War I and II were because of technology. It was a fascinating discussion, and I was able to participate because I've been listening to The First World War by John Keegan. So you're able to be more part of the conversation when topics come up like that with family and friends when you are listening to an audiobook. So go check out membership. It's free. Just try it for 30 days. See what you think. Audible.com/Wade or text Wade to 500-500.
Hi, it's Jonathan Cotton with the Good Feet Store, and I've shared before how I love an organization called TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. Recently, we invited some TAPS family members who had lost a military loved one to have dinner with us. As we listened to their stories, I was reminded again of how the loss of a military loved one is such a devastating experience. Not only is the loved one gone, but often they lose their military community, and sometimes an entire lifestyle. My heart was sad over their grief, yet my spirit was inspired by their courage. Then to top it off, I was amazed at their graciousness as they thanked us for just listening. At the Good Feet Store, we love helping you get out of pain and back into the life you love, and we love supporting the work of TAPS. Come in today for your free fitting and test walk and ask any of our team members why TAPS is an organization that every American can support. Visit goodfeet.com for the location nearest you.
You might have noticed a change in your neighborhood lately. Yep, Sprint stores are now T-Mobile stores. Now that Sprint is T-Mobile, you get more coverage, value, and benefits than ever before. We've invested billions to bring our 5G from big cities to small towns across America. And great coverage is just the start. From high-speed mobile hotspot data to weekly deals and giveaways, our customers get tons of great benefits. Head to your new T-Mobile store to learn more.
Qualifying service and capable device required. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain plan or features. See T-Mobile.com.
Been thinking about McDonald's all day. Can't get it off my mind. I can already taste it. Ooh, got my mind on my mouth and my mouth ready for some Mickey D's deal.
There's a deal for every moment at McDonald's.
Right now, get 2 of your favorites for just $3.50. Mix and match a classic McChicken, a hot and spicy McChicken, or a juicy McDouble. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with combo meal. Single item at regular price.
If it's Sunday, it's Wrestling Night in America here on PWTorchDailyCast.com. Good Sunday evening for October 10th, 2021. I am Pro Wrestling Torch columnist Greg Parks here with Wrestling Night in America, and a lot to talk about here this week as we look ahead to some of the biggest shows in professional wrestling and look back at some as well. Coming up, we have Crown Jewel in about a week and a half, and we've got Bound for Glory in about 2 weeks as Impact Wrestling puts on one of their big shows of the year. So we'll be sure to talk about those in the coming weeks. Tonight we're going to talk about MLW, a promotion that does not get a lot of play here on this show, but they had a big Fightland special on Vice TV this past week, so we're going to delve into that. We're also going to talk about WWE's King and Queen of the Ring tournaments. We'll take a brief look at Crown Jewel before we do a full preview of that next Sunday night, and we'll talk, of course, about Night 2 of the Draft, which took place on Monday Night Raw this past week. And to help me slice through all this meaty information of professional wrestling is PWTorch.com contributor Brandon LeClaire. Brandon, thank you for joining me once again here on Wrestling Night in America.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here.
Brandon, I want to start the show off with Fightland. I was really intrigued by this. It had been getting a lot of press coverage. Court Bauer had been doing a full court press on social media as far as getting the word out about this show on Vice TV this past week, a special 1-hour MLW Fightland with a match 2 years in the making in the main event, Jacob Fatu versus Alexander Hammerstone. I've watched MLW on occasion. I watched, I think, their first show back during the pandemic. They had taken some time off, and their first show back I watched and reviewed for my full-page column that I do each week in the PW Torch newsletter. And that was really the last time I think I'd watched MLW. It's one of those promotions I kind of keep an eye on from afar. And I know when I told you we were going to talk about this show, I know you set your DVR to watch it. But prior to watching Fightland, what has been your experience, if any, watching MLW in the past?
Very, very little. Similar to you, I mean, like I'm peripherally aware of it because of the coverage I do for the Torch and things I hear, you know, whether it be listening to various VIP audio shows or just kind of following along with general promotion, you know, where promotions are headed through the Torch and through other news outlets. So I'm vaguely familiar with the product, but yeah, I mean this event on Thursday on Vice was really my first real major exposure to the company.
And so I'm curious as to what your takeaway was after the hour episode.
Yeah, I thought that it was a serviceable show. I mean, I didn't come away feeling like this is a product that I have to begin putting on my radar on a weekly basis or really following with a super close eye. But I'm also very selective in the pro wrestling that I watch simply because there's just so much of it out there and it already occupies so much of my time. I have other hobbies as well, so for me,
you're not allowed, Brandon. When you cover professional wrestling, you're not allowed to have other hobbies.
I do. Yeah, I get that sense sometimes, and sometimes just trying to keep up with the promotions that I do follow regularly, it feels like I'm not allowed to have other hobbies, honestly. So it's in this day and age where there's so many promotions vying for attention. And you're trying to keep up with, you know, even keeping up with the two major ones in WWE and AEW can sometimes be a little bit challenging. So I didn't come out of this MLW show feeling like, man, I just have to tune into the show from here on out. But I did enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed it enough to say that, you know, in the future, if they're going to have a big event that seems like it's got a lot of steam going into it, then yeah, I'll record it or tune in live, one or the other. So, you know, they certainly didn't turn me off, but they didn't grab me to the point of putting it into my regular viewing either.
I think the tough part too was the 1 hour time slot, because when you are a company that is like MLW, where you are trying to grab a new audience here on Vice TV. You know, the time slot was following one of Vice TV's biggest shows, which is Dark Side of the Ring. And you have a lot of wrestling fans who watch that show. Right. So this is an opportunity to showcase your wares to theoretically a new audience. And when you have a company like that is trying to grow and that has a big special event that's going to be seen by more eyes than they otherwise would have, it's really difficult because you're serving two masters. You are trying to put on a show that is going to keep the interest of your diehard fans who watch everything you do, who know all the talent like the back of their hand, who are already familiar with the roster, but you're also trying to grab the attention of new fans and showcase who these wrestlers are and things of that nature. So that's always the difficult part, and putting it in a 1-hour time slot made it all the more difficult. Because there was no time for instance, we'll talk about that opening four-way in a minute, but there were no entrances, so you didn't get any sense of what the characters were. No. There were no video packages to tell me who Eris or Aramis are, who I'm not familiar with. They were just kind of thrown out there. And, I don't blame MLW because they only had an hour. So it's not like they could have, and we'll talk about the MLW embedded segment too. I mean, maybe you cut that out to give more time to video packages or whatever like that. But that 1-hour time slot makes it really difficult to do proper justice to introduce these talents to the new viewers.
Yeah, it definitely does. And they're in an interesting spot too, because when you are a promotion at MLW's level, when you are vying for new viewers, you're catering specifically to wrestling fans. Whereas a company like WWE or even to some extent AEW, they're trying to gain new eyes no matter who those eyes are. They don't care if you're a wrestling fan coming in. They want you to turn on their program and potentially get hooked. With MLW, there's obviously an awareness that if you're not a wrestling fan, MLW is not suddenly going to change that. You're not going to stumble upon MLW on Vice TV and think, I think I'll just give this wrestling here a shot. I mean, they are vying for eyes that are already on pro wrestling. And so it's a matter of catching the eye of people who are already in tune with some other promotion, be that WWE or AEW, perhaps both, maybe Ring of Honor, maybe Impact, whatever the case may be. And yeah, I mean, they're able to get away with a certain amount of flippancy with character introductions, just because I think as wrestling fans, I think we tend to be able to get up to speed pretty quickly. But at the same time, yeah, for some of the guys that were on that show who I'd never seen before, it is hard to sort of jump in right away. It was cool. It's cool to see Tajiri again. I mean, It's been a long time since I had seen him wrestle.
Yeah, absolutely. And so obviously that's a guy who probably needs no introduction for the viewing audience, right. the new fans who are checking out MLW for the first time, perhaps. The show was taped in Philadelphia, hosted by Rich Bikini, the former Rich Brennan in WWE, and Saint Laurent, who works behind the scenes in MLW. The first match, as we mentioned, all four participants already in the ring, was the middleweight championship match, the title held by Myron Reed going into the match. He lost the title, however, to Yoshihiro Tajiri, who has a history in the ECW arena, the 2300 arena, when he wrestled for ECW. So Tajiri gets the victory over Myron Reed, Eris, and Aramis. Thoughts on the match, Brandon, and what wrestler here, maybe that you hadn't been all that familiar with, stood out to you most?
I thought it was a fun enough match. I mean, I thought that everybody kind of played their part, and it came off strong enough. It was a bit of kind of what you would expect out of an opener and out of an opening four-way. I was actually pleasantly surprised by what Tajiri still kind of had in the tank. I mean, like, They certainly picked their spots with him. He's definitely slowed down. He's not the same wrestler that he once was, but they put him in some really strong positions in order to look good and to come out of there in a strong spot.
Yeah, I thought Aramis was a guy who impressed me in this match, and he's not someone I knew all that much about. But now, if I see him on a show coming up, or if I hear his name on a card, I'll certainly think of this performance that he had in this match. But you're right, Tajiri, it looked like Tajiri hadn't slept in about 5 days. He had the bags under his eyes, ever present. So it was good to see him perform well too. And yeah, it was a fun match. My problem with this is there was a time where this sort of match would stand out amongst what's being offered by other companies. But you have Impact putting on an X Division title match of this caliber every pay-per-view, usually in the opener. You have AEW, which has sort of reset the bar for athleticism on their shows. And so does MLW need to do something different now to grab the attention of the wrestling audience? Is this kind of match going to do it anymore?
That's sort of one of the issues that I think arose for me during watching the show, wondering what set them apart from other promotions, and I was having a hard time coming up with an answer. And so I think you're on to something there. They don't want to be the obviously they don't want to be the deathmatch promotion. Like something like GCW has its niche, and they have a very pronounced style. You can kind of see what they're doing. You kind of know what to expect. With MLW, it's sort of this. They're working a WWE main roster, or more so like NXT 1.0 type style, an AEW type style, good wrestling, fast-paced wrestling, but nothing that stands out in any particular way, like you were mentioning. So, yeah, when you can turn on Ring of Honor or you can turn on Impact or AEW and see this kind of match week after week, I don't know that MLW being a step behind in, character work, a step behind in presentation. And not that the presentation was bad. I thought for the size promotion that it was, it, looked the part. It was filmed nicely. The camera work was solid. The entrance looked good. I mean, it felt sufficiently major. It's just that it doesn't seem to stand out in any real particular way.
Hi, it's Jonathan Cotton with the Good Feet Store, and you know what time of year it is? It's back to school time, and time once again for all of those after-school activities. Whether it's ballet or football, drama or field hockey, band or basketball, kids' feet need to feel good. Those cleats, sneakers, or shoes for band often don't do those young feet any favors. If our kids are going to stay active and healthy, then they need good feet. That means it's also time to take your kids to the Good Feet Store. Yeah, that's right, the young ones, the kids. Bring them into the Good Feet Store and let's treat them to some personal service. Our team members will measure their feet and find the right arch support for them. They can still wear the shoes they want, but they will have the support to make them comfortable now and keep their feet healthy for the future. It won't take long, and it could change their life. Go to goodfeet.com to make an appointment or just stop by the location nearest you. The Good Feet Store.
Been thinking about McDonald's all day. Can't get it off my mind. I can already taste it. Ooh, got my mind on my mouth and my mouth ready for some Mickey D's deal.
There's a deal for every moment at McDonald's.
Right now, get 2 of your favorites for just $3.50. Mix and match a classic McChicken, a hot and spicy McChicken, or a juicy McDouble. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Been thinking about McDonald's all day. Can't get it off my mind. I can already taste it. Ooh, got my mind on my mouth and my mouth ready for some Mickey D's deal.
There's a deal for every moment at McDonald's.
Right now, get 2 of your favorites for just $3.50. Mix and match a classic McChicken, a hot and spicy McChicken, or a juicy McDouble. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Daily Cast listeners, thank you, first of all, for streaming the shows. Be sure you're subscribing. Just search PW Torch in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to pro wrestling podcasts. But while you're at it, if you're not yet, please subscribe to the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast and Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Shows. Search Wade Keller and see 2 logos pop up, a blue one and a red one. The red logo, the post shows, cover Raw and SmackDown each week. with a fast turnaround time of a couple hours after the show's end. And also every Saturday we present a flashback to our analysis from 5 years ago that week, covering Raw. Jason Paulwell from ProWrestling.net joins me, and we analyze what happened on Raw 5 years ago. So check out that time capsule every weekend. The Blue Logo Show features the Thursday flagship, plus our first-run interviews, our classic interviews, and our mailbag segments. So, again, search Wade Keller and click subscribe to both the red logo and the blue logo.
Whoever said good things come to those who wait never tried to buy a Honda. Because right now, new Hondas are selling fast. So fast that if you want one, you'll probably need to put your name on it. Because adventure waits for no one, and neither will a rugged all-wheel drive Honda like the dependable, long-lasting 8-passenger Honda Pilot. So hurry up and reserve your Honda before someone else does. See your local Honda dealer or go to WashingtonareaHondaDealers.com.
Hey, Jen, we need to sell our home. Do you know a great agent?
I do. We just sold with a local Redfin agent. It was awesome. And we paid a 1% listing fee because we bought our new home with Redfin, too.
Wow, 1%. Are Redfin agents full service?
Totally. Our Redfin agent did it all, and we sold for thousands more than the home next door.
I'll check out Redfin today.
1% listing fee when purchasing with Redfin, subject to minimums, terms, and conditions. Does not include buyer's agent commission. Learn more at redfin.com or call 844-759-7732.
For 40 years, Michael Myers has haunted this town. He is the essence of evil, and evil dies tonight.
Halloween Kills, rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent, in theaters and streaming only on Peacock now.
Well, perhaps one way this show did stand out was MLW Embedded, where they spent about 10 minutes of their allotted 1-hour show talking to a few wrestling journalists about the happenings that are going on in professional wrestling these days. And, you know, if this was a 2-hour show and you took up 10 minutes with this, okay, yeah, that's fine. But when you have a 1-hour show and it's your special and you're attracting perhaps a new audience, to take up valuable TV time with this concept where you talk about other promotions. Brandon, help me out here. I'm not sure what MLW was going for here, especially because, I mean, you know, they're talking about the WWE. They're talking about the WWE releases, man. That's 2 months old at this point. Like, that's been talked about to death by now. It's not exactly the cutting edge of wrestling discussion either right now.
Yeah, it was baffling to say the least. This is sort of where I was particularly thrown off. I was trying to sort of reason it, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a promotion that has its roots in the podcast business, in more of, you know, the news business. At least after their first stint, then they kind of shutter for a while, become this podcast network, this more news focused network, and then eventually, you know, expand back into a wrestling promotion. And I don't know that is something that they want to carry into their main product. I mean, it's certainly different. It's a way to set themselves apart, but I don't think that that's the way in which you want to set yourself apart. You want to focus on your in-ring action, and if you're trying to be different, then that's where you should be different. I mean, I don't think that openly talking about other promotions in a journalistic type way is enough to set you apart in a positive way from, say, a Ring of Honor or an Impact Wrestling. It's a baffling decision for sure. I think that they probably feel like they're gaining some sort of clout or notoriety by featuring a name like Dave Meltzer, but I'm not sure that that's something that wrestling fans are clamoring to have interjected into their product. It's almost as if they treated it like a halftime show, and without expressly saying it was a halftime show. And it didn't work for me, and I think that it was an opportunity wasted on like you said, a show where they don't have a ton of time to work with to begin with.
And look, like I said, I don't think this concept is a terrible idea as an idea.
No.
Like, I think it can work. Like I said, if you're doing a 2-hour show, Sure, throw this on for 10 minutes to break things up. If you wanted to, let's say Vice TV has a weekly MLW show for an hour, and then right after that they do a half hour of this, the talking heads, the journalists who are talking about current events in professional wrestling, even produced by MLW. I don't have a problem with that. I think that would be a great idea. But I have a problem with putting it in the middle of a 1-hour show that's supposed to be your special, putting your best foot forward, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the timing of it is what bothered me the most about it, not the concept itself. And the other thing was Alicia Atout, her big announcement was Will Ospreay being an MLW, and they had kind of broken that earlier in the show. When they were running down the card for or the future events, they had already mentioned Will Ospreay, the announcers did. So to the TV viewers, her big announcement was not a big announcement because they had already talked about it earlier. So it was just strange. The execution was okay, but like I said, I don't think it was what MLW needed on this particular event.
Yeah, I think that when you are focused on trying to pull in new viewers when you're on a cable network like Vice for this big show, where you're featuring a pretty big main event in the context of your promotion, the last thing that you want to do is be giving free airtime to other promotions who are doing things bigger and for the most part better than you are. I just don't think that is how you want to spend your TV time. But I think that they clearly have a handle of who their audience is, and that's why I agree. In execution, in theory, I don't think having this segment is necessarily a bad idea because they know who they're catering to, but not on this show.
And I refuse to be cynical enough to throw out the idea that MLW is bringing these journalists together in order to sort of grease the wheels for future coverage of their product. I will not say that. I will not make that connection. I refuse to. I will not. I think more highly of MLW and Court Bauer than that, but moving on. The main event was openweight national champion Alexander Hammerstone against world champion Jacob Fatu in a no DQ match. Joseph Samael out with Jacob Fatu, and this match had been built for almost 2 years, as the announcers mentioned at the top of the show. So this was certainly the biggest match that MLW could run with in this situation. Hammerstone ends up getting the victory with a TKO and beats Fatu to become MLW world champion. These are two guys who I think, they've got what WWE looks for in wrestlers. I don't know if they would be as attractive to AEW, but certainly these two have to be on the radar of WWE, and for MLW to have two stars of this caliber at the top of their card, I think is a feather in their cap.
Yeah, that's sort of exactly how I felt watching this, is that it felt like a match that you could have picked up and plucked onto WWE main roster TV, maybe with some slight adjustments in terms of violence and whatnot. But for the most part, they seem to work a mostly safe style. It was a solid match, nothing that burned the house down or anything, but strong, and the crowd was into these two characters, and that certainly helped a great deal. I think that this was my first exposure to Hammerstone entirely. Thought he had a really good look. I thought that the crowd was behind the match and behind him enough to make things interesting. Fatu, of course, I hadn't seen wrestle a whole lot, but am quite familiar in terms of the relation to the Usos and whatnot. So it was cool to see him in the ring in a big match situation. He seems like a sure fit for WWE, especially with their ties to that family. So I'd be interested to see if this isn't a preview of two guys that we see in WWE before too long.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to reset things here, this is Wrestling Night in America for October 10th, 2021. I am Pro Wrestling Torch columnist Greg Parks, and I'm joined this week by PWTorch.com contributor Brandon LeClaire. And you can join in on the conversation You can call in 515-605-9345. Press 1 to show up in the queue to talk, or you can email us anytime, wnialivecast@gmail.com. Let's go to the phones. The 814 area code. Ryan from Cumberland, Maryland is up first. Ryan, welcome to Wrestling Night in America. What's your first question for us tonight?
First question is on the Major League Wrestling show. Do you see Dave Meltzer maybe make an appearance in AEW since he's already been featured on the MLW show, and supposedly he calls Tony Khan about every day, so I think that would make more sense he would show up there.
Well, I mean, there's got to be a good reason for it. You know, I don't think Dave's been doing this long enough, and I don't think he has any interest in being a character or a frequent presence or anything like that. I think if it's in a strictly news capacity, which is what he was on MLW, I think there's room for that, but I don't see him making any kind of regular appearances, unless AEW copies this news format that MLW is doing. I don't see him doing that. I know he's talks to folks in AEW frequently, Brandon, but I just don't. I don't see a good idea to fit into the AEW ecosystem where he would appear, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think that he would fit within the narrative structure of AEW unless, like you said, you're doing a similar thing where you're temporarily suspending the product in favor of a journalistic approach covering pro wrestling, and I don't think that's something that AEW wants to do on their show, especially if it were to cover multiple promotions. You certainly don't want to be talking WWE news during an AEW product. They are certainly more friendly with other smaller promotions and definitely have partnerships with them. But I don't see anywhere that Dave would really fit in on AEW TV unless it were in some sort of storyline capacity, and like you said, as a credible journalist who's been doing this for a long time and hasn't given in to any temptation in that regard up to now, especially with the name dropping from the Bucks all these years. I don't necessarily think that it would be something that will come to fruition now.
And as a journalist, you've always got to be careful about keeping an arm's length from the topics that you cover. You don't want to become the story. You don't want to have your bona fides called into question or your journalistic integrity called into question. And so you got to very carefully pick and choose. If you're offered anything where you're appearing on a company's program, you got to be careful and make sure that it's done in a way that does not compromise your journalistic ethics, I guess is what I'll say. Yes, even for covering pro wrestling. Mm-hmm. Ryan, back to you for your second question for us.
Okay, second question is on the TBS women's title. Do you see Jade Cargill being the favorite to win the title, or do you see someone else maybe being the favorite for that tournament?
Well, it seems like they're building Jade up for something big. She's coming in, she's squashing a lot of folks. So I think if Brandon, AEW brass feel Jade is ready to go beyond that and to actually wrestle long competitive matches, then I don't think they'd have a problem putting the title on her. I don't know that she's there yet. I think she's very impressive in the short squashes, and she can still do that for a while. Like, I don't see any reason to move her away from that. Yes, eventually, if you're going by the rankings, she would have to move up the rankings and eventually qualify for a title shot. But as far as the TBS title, the new women's title that was announced, I think she's got to be a contender for it. Brandon, do you see anyone else who makes more sense to hold that title first?
Yeah, I think that she certainly could be considered one of a few front runners, and I'm not necessarily opposed to her being the person that winds up with the title, though I do think that there's something to be said for having that TBS belt be somewhat of a workhorse title in the same way that I think they've tried to position the TNT title. And if that's the direction that they want to go, I don't think that Jade is necessarily the right pick right now. I think that I would almost be inclined to continue to set her up on a track to perhaps challenge Britt Baker in a position where Britt has sort of completely turned the corner into babyface territory, because it's very clear that as much as AEW would prefer Britt be the heel going forward, she just continues to get a huge number of cheers every single week. It's quickly becoming a Becky Lynch situation where her attitude and how good she's become as a performer is making it really, really hard for people to dislike her. So I sort of like the track of Jade eventually becoming a challenger for babyface Britt Baker. And as to where that leaves the TBS title, I like going in the direction of either Thunder Rosa, given her history in the division and how impressive she's been in some of her outings, or Ruby Soho, who was their big free agent signing and who certainly immediately elevated the women's division upon her arrival and was cast aside after losing to Britt Baker. I think that giving her the secondary title in the women's division and letting her kind of run with it for a while as sort of the leader of that workhorse title would be a strong first champion.
Where's my order? Does anyone know how to find my order? How can I find my order? Break free from customer support monotony. Welcome to Intercom, the customer support platform that uses chatbots, shared inboxes, apps, and more. Intercom's business messenger resolves questions that can be answered automatically, so customer support feels less like Groundhog Day and more like help is on the way. Go to intercom.com/support to learn more.
You might have noticed a change in your neighborhood lately. Yep, Sprint stores are now T-Mobile stores. Now that Sprint is T-Mobile, you get more coverage, value, and benefits than ever before. We've invested billions to bring our 5G from big cities to small towns across America. And great coverage is just the start. From high-speed mobile hotspot data to weekly deals and giveaways, our customers get tons of great benefits. Head to your new T-Mobile store to learn more.
Qualifying service and capable device required. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain plan or features. See T-Mobile.com.
You might have noticed a change in your neighborhood lately. Yep, Sprint stores are now T-Mobile stores. Now that Sprint is T-Mobile, you get more coverage, value, and benefits than ever before. We've invested billions to bring our 5G from big cities to small towns across America. And great coverage is just the start. From high-speed mobile hotspot data to weekly deals and giveaways, our customers get tons of great benefits. Head to your new T-Mobile store to learn more.
Qualifying service and capable device required. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain plan or features. See T-Mobile.com.
Wrestling fans, if you're looking for a unique and entertaining way to get your wrestling podcast fix, check out Ring Rust Radio. Ring Rust Radio uses its trademark brand of banter to cover all professional wrestling you love, including WWE, NXT, New Japan, Lucha Underground, ROH, Impact Wrestling, and more. We also hold sit-down interviews with some of the biggest names in the history of the business, such as Stone Cold Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle, Trish Stratus, AJ Styles, and Roman Reigns. For those of you who want their wrestling with a perfect mix of serious analysis and comic relief, find Ring Rust Radio dropping every Wednesday night on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Get running this fall at Dunkin' with $2 medium iced coffees from 2 to 6 p.m. Try any of Dunkin's delicious iced coffee, like their signature original blend. Or treat yourself to mocha, caramel, or the fall favorite, pumpkin. Always freshly brewed, made just the way you like it. Make time for happy hour and enjoy a $2 medium iced coffee from 2 to 6 p.m. Washington, D.C. runs on Dunkin'. Participation may vary. Limited time offer. Exclusions apply.
Hey, Jen, we need to sell our home. Do you know a great agent?
I do. We just sold with a local Redfin agent. It was awesome. And we paid a 1% listing fee because we bought our new home with Redfin, too.
Wow, 1%. Are Redfin agents full service?
Totally. Our Redfin agent did it all, and we sold for thousands more than the home next door.
I'll check out Redfin today.
1% listing fee when purchasing with Redfin, subject to minimums, terms, and conditions. Does not include buyer's agent commission. Learn more at redfin.com or call 844-759-7732.
When you vote in Virginia, you can vote with confidence knowing every election is safe, secure, and accessible. Our certified election registrars and volunteers follow strict processes and procedures to make sure every vote counts. These safeguards include validating registered voters during early, absentee, and election day voting, voting machines that are never connected to the internet, and ballot boxes that are locked and sealed. Learn more at vote.virginia.gov.
Yeah, all those are good opportunities, good possibilities for those women. I mean, AEW's roster is certainly deep enough right now, and this wasn't always the case with AEW, but the women's roster is deep enough to where you have a pretty incredible field of contenders for that women's championship. Ryan, back to you for your third question for us.
Yeah, final question's on a wrestling event I went to the TV taping for World Domination, and they had a new wrestler called Marvelous Joe Biden wrestle. Do you think that will get any press? Because WWE got some press with that Joe Gacy character, and all he did was say he was in a safe space, which wasn't a whole lot. This is a little bit more extreme by going out calling one of your wrestlers by the name of the president.
Yeah, it's just cheap heat. That's certainly what that screams to me. I don't know if it's if it's done on a major show on a major network like Joe Gacy with NXT, yeah, it's going to get some press. But if it's on a minor show and no one, it's the old if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? and if a gimmick is controversial but no one's around to care, is it really controversial? And I guess the answer is no. You've had a lot of political gimmicks over time that haven't really moved the needle, so it sounds like this might be one of them, Brandon.
Yeah, definitely seems that way. Although, who knows? People have certainly gotten attention by doing crazy stuff on the indies in the past. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, if this character has legs, I'm not familiar with it in any way, but I do think of and granted, not that this guy is necessarily anywhere in the ballpark in terms of being as talented as MJF, but I think back to pre-AEW days, I was seeing MJF at a promotion up here in Maine pretty frequently, and he certainly ruffled feathers up here and was very regularly getting into spitting matches with dads who had brought their kids to meet him, and he would, in no uncertain terms, tell them to F off and any number of things. So you never know what's gonna catch on.
Ryan, as always, thanks for leading us off this week.
Yeah, thanks for taking the call. And by the way, this Joe Biden character didn't speak, so I don't know if it'll be a controversial character.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to be controversial if you don't say anything. So I feel like that kind of takes away a lot.
The name, nothing else.
Yeah, blunts a lot of the controversy there. Brandon, let's look at draft night number 2. I had John Mazzara on last Sunday, and we were in that sort of odd space between night 1 of the draft on SmackDown and night 2 on Raw. So we could talk about SmackDown, but we could only preview a little bit of what we thought might happen on Raw. Now that Raw is over, the draft is over, let's take a look at what happened on night 2. And the big moves from SmackDown to Raw were Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, the Street Profits, Finn Balor, Carmella, and not from SmackDown to Raw, but nevertheless, Gable Steveson was drafted by Raw. And to SmackDown from Raw, Sheamus, Shayna Baszler, Xia Li going from NXT to SmackDown, the Viking Raiders, Ricochet, Garza, and Carrillo as a tag team, and Ridge Holland also moving from NXT to SmackDown. So, we discussed this last week with John, and looking at the SmackDown 3 of Sasha Banks, Bianca Belair, and Becky Lynch, and wondering which one of them was going to be the one to move to Raw. And it ended up being Becky Lynch. Do you think that was the right move?
So I was sort of thinking that there was a strong chance that Becky might be moving over given Seth's move. So you figure that they're likely keeping most of these couples together, whether they're together on TV or not. And it seemed obvious once Charlotte made the move over that, barring any quick title switch, that Becky would be the one to go. I think that Raw was in pretty desperate need of some star power. And once it became inherently clear that Roman Reigns would be staying on SmackDown and that SmackDown would also be gaining Drew McIntyre, they needed to go with a heavy hitter in the women's division to kind of anchor Monday nights. And I know that in the past that's been Charlotte. But to me, while Charlotte is certainly WWE's golden child in the women's division, I think from a marketability perspective, and I think from a fan perspective, Becky Lynch is seen as the bigger star. And so having her over there, I think is a help to Monday nights in general, especially if she's going to move back toward the babyface role, which is kind of what Wade and I wondered this past Monday when I joined him for the Raw post show post the final night of the draft, and we kind of both thought that Becky was exhibiting some characteristics on Monday that may lend itself to her kind of pulling back the reins just a little bit on the heel character and maybe leaning back into the idea that, hey, this might have been a mistake here. So I think that it's probably the right move, generally speaking. As someone who really enjoys SmackDown for the most part and doesn't at all enjoy Raw, I would personally rather see Becky on SmackDown, but I do think it's probably the right move.
When you look at some of these changes that were made on Monday Night Raw, who do you look at that may benefit the most from that switch of brands?
It's really interesting because I was shocked that on Monday night, the first 5 picks for Raw were just guys and girls that were there last year. Mm-hmm. So they're literally deep enough into this roster split at this point that they've got several men and women who are just changing brands every year. So there aren't a ton of, you can call them fresh faces, but they aren't necessarily that fresh because the product and the rosters haven't changed that dramatically from this time last year. So I look at a guy like Seth Rollins, who is going to be getting out from underneath the Roman Reigns character, who can possibly move up the ranks again and become a main event heel on Raw. I think that there's a strong possibility of that. Again, I think Becky Lynch having her own show where she can breathe at the top of the card very clearly is probably going to be strong for her. Bianca Belair is another one who has kind of done everything that she can do on SmackDown, and so moving to Raw, where she was once before but wasn't treated like a star over there, I think that that could be potentially a good opportunity for her. And then you have other guys like Kevin Owens, who just seems to switch every year, and it doesn't really make much of a difference.
Yeah, I look at someone like Shayna Baszler, and I know she's going to slot in after Belair and Banks on SmackDown, but we're seeing the development of the character that I think a lot of people thought she should be when she was called up to the main roster, a lot more like her NXT character. And I'm hoping that sort of continues on SmackDown. And that was one move I advocated in my column a couple weeks ago when I looked at potential changes that should be made. So I look at Shayna Baszler going to SmackDown as a positive. And, I mean, what do you make of Gable Steveson to Raw? Was that just to get some free press from the mainstream sports media who, still going on that high from the Olympics of maybe him being in the eye a little bit, or do you think he's going to make some appearances here on Raw? Maybe not in a wrestling capacity necessarily, but is there more to it than just getting his name out there?
Yeah, I think that if you spend a draft pick on a name like Stevenson at this point in his, or before his career really even officially begins, I feel like there's got to be some sort of plan in the works to get him on TV, be that in a wrestling capacity or just in an appearance capacity. Wade and I talked about this a little bit, where we both kind of thought, okay, this is an opportunity for maybe him to get on TV and to perhaps get a couple of wins over lower card guys that they don't really see anything in very quick, dominating fashion. We're talking obviously a guy who is not at all ready to go out there and compete in long matches by any stretch. But perhaps they've already seen something in the little time that they've had him in the Performance Center that says that he's going to catch on quickly and be a really quick learner, like someone like Kurt Angle. But I don't think that even Kurt Angle was competing in matches quite that quickly. And Angle also had the benefit of working the house show circuit for several months before debuting on TV, whereas now, they're lucky if they run 1 or 2 house shows a week. Tops. So instead, we're talking about, how long until they've gotten enough practice matches under Gable's belt where they feel comfortable putting him out there in front of a live audience. They must be wanting to at least have him appear, because again, I don't think that if this were just sort of a speculative draft pick, and the idea is just that we're not going to hear of him again for months or maybe a year or two, I don't know that they necessarily would have spent the pick on him, simply because they already got the publicity from just signing him in the first place.
And my final question before we go back to the phones is, you look at Xia Li and Ridge Holland coming up from NXT. We know that Xia Li has been in dark matches. Her pick here was not exactly a surprise, but this wasn't exactly full of NXT stars being called up to the main roster. Hit Row was drafted on the first night of SmackDown. What do you make of the particular selections from NXT to the main roster, and what kind of success do you think they could have talking about Hit Row, Xia Li, and Ridge Holland?
It's sort of hard to read this year, given that the landscape in NXT has changed so dramatically, and for a long time you sort of you almost sort of you hold your breath, hoping that maybe your favorite NXT talent doesn't get called up to the main roster, because history has told us that most of them don't particularly work out all that well once they get into Vince McMahon's hands. This year is a little bit different when you consider that, perhaps being called up to the main roster for the first time truly is a real call-up, because NXT has become what it now is. So I look at an act like Hit Row and think that this is probably a pretty good opportunity for them on the main stage. I do worry a little bit that, like we saw in the last few weeks in NXT, that there's going to be far too much focus on them obsessing over the looks of BFAB rather than just being a really cool, timely, and sort of pertinent group that is a bunch of friends that are, happy for each other and excited to have success. And more of, hey, look how hot our friend is. That's sort of my worst case scenario situation. And I'm sure there's going to be some of that. That's just natural on a Vince McMahon booked wrestling show, but hopefully they can sort of rise above it. I think that their ability on the microphone is going to put them ahead of the curve in terms of the other acts that were called up over to SmackDown. Xia Li's an interesting one because, the talent is there. It's a cool gimmick. It's a nice looking act, but we've seen the proclivities of Vince McMahon and how he doesn't necessarily like to book foreign characters all that strong, especially in the women's division. I mean, Asuka was more or less shelved until she showed that she could be a comedic character. So I worry about that. Ridge Holland, I think that could go either way. I think that Vince McMahon could fall in love with the size and with the presence. And I think that also he could just very quickly get lost in the shuffle. It's a matter of what kind of opportunities he's given and how well he shows up.
I think Hit Row far and away have the highest ceiling of the ones that were called up from NXT. Xia Li, I think she's got the experience because she's been in the Royal Rumbles before, but I don't really know what her ceiling is as far as the women's division, especially if they go a different direction with her character. I think even if you strip away the mystical parts of her character that she was playing in NXT with Mei Ying, I think if you kept that aggressiveness, then that could work. But I don't know that that's going to be the character we see. And then Ridge Holland, I just don't. It's one of those call-ups that leaves you scratching your head. Like, what do they see in him above and beyond some of the other talent in NXT? I mean, he's got a decent enough look, but he's kind of short. He's kind of stout. He's muscular, but he's not all that impressive. It just, I just don't really get that one more so even than Xia Li and Hit Row. So we'll have to see where he slots in. Maybe some hard-hitting matches with Sheamus gets him over. I don't know, on SmackDown. I can see that happening, or maybe he'll kind of be the second to Sheamus. Maybe they'll form a partnership or something like that. Before we go to the phones, the G1 Climax update.
We know that Sheamus...
Yeah, go ahead.
We know that Sheamus frequently ends up looking really good in tag teams. So
yeah.
I mean, it does sort of feel pre-written that a guy like that could end up in a tag team with Sheamus.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it could go either way, either feud or tag team. You just feel like he's going to end up doing something with Sheamus somewhere along the way.
Or both.
Yeah, absolutely. The G1 Climax, we're through 13 nights, almost to the end. The A block standings right now, Ibushi has 12 points. Zack Sabre Jr., Kenta, and Takagi tied with 10. And in the B block, Jeff Cobb and Okada both have 12. Evil stands at 10 points.
Hi, it's Jonathan Cotton with the Good Feet Store, and I've shared before how I love an organization called TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. Recently, we invited some TAPS family members who had lost a military loved one to have dinner with us. As we listened to their stories, I was reminded again of how the loss of a military loved one is such a devastating experience. Not only is the loved one gone, but often they lose their military community, and sometimes an entire lifestyle. My heart was sad over their grief, yet my spirit was inspired by their courage. Then to top it off, I was amazed at their graciousness as they thanked us for just listening. At the Good Feet Store, we love helping you get out of pain and back into the life you love, and we love supporting the work of TAPS. Come in today for your free fitting and test walk, and ask any of our team members why TAPS is an organization that every American can support. Visit goodfeet.com for the location nearest you.
You might have noticed a change in your neighborhood lately. Yep, Sprint stores are now T-Mobile stores. Now that Sprint is T-Mobile, you get more coverage, value, and benefits than ever before. We've invested billions to bring our 5G from big cities to small towns across America. And great coverage is just the start. From high-speed mobile hotspot data to weekly deals and giveaways, our customers get tons of great benefits. Head to your new T-Mobile store to learn more.
Qualifying service and capable device required. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain plan or features. See T-Mobile.com.
For 40 years, Michael Myers has haunted this town. He is the essence of evil, and evil dies tonight.
Halloween Kills, rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent. In theaters and streaming only on Peacock now.
Are you a fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling? Then join the New Japan Pride podcast starring
Bethany Rubel
and Javier Machado.
With an eye for the action.
And an eye for the story. We'll keep you abreast of all New Japan shows both in Japan
and also covering their American expansion with New Japan Strong.
And I'll watch all the Yano matches so Bethany doesn't have to.
And I'll watch all of the Ibushi matches.
Wait a minute. I didn't script that.
Listen to our weekly podcast exclusively with the PW Torch VIP membership. Become a member at pwtorch.com/govip.
Get running this fall at Dunkin' with $2 medium iced coffees from 2 to 6 p.m. Try any of Dunkin's delicious iced coffee, like their signature original blend. Or treat yourself to mocha, caramel, or the fall favorite, pumpkin. Always freshly brewed, made just the way you like it. Make time for happy hour and enjoy a $2 medium iced coffee from 2 to 6 p.m. Washington, D.C. runs on Dunkin'. Participation may vary. Limited time offer. Exclusions apply.
For 40 years, Michael Myers has haunted this town. He is the essence of evil, and evil dies tonight.
Halloween Kills, rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent. In theaters and streaming only on Peacock now.
Back to the phones we go. Reverend Keith from Baltimore, Maryland is on the show. Reverend Keith, welcome back to Wrestling Night in America tonight.
Thank you, Greg and Brandon. How are you guys tonight?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. It's good to hear you both, and I've enjoyed your analysis thus far of both the draft and the MLW, shall I say, show from Fightland. Just to discuss that briefly, Hammerstone suffered a massive injury to his left ankle. I'm sure you saw how his weight shifted as he was coming down after giving Fatu a big boot. So they'll make an announcement soon as to how long he may be out. Hopefully it won't be too long, but that was a rough blow right there. Did you see it?
Yeah, and the referees, not the referee, but the announcers certainly called attention to it. And boy, if they have this multi-year journey of Hammerstone finally knocking off Jacob Fatu and then having to relinquish the title because of an injury, depending, of course, upon how serious it is, Brandon, talk about a rough patch there. I mean, it's on one hand, it's terrible because you've booked for this moment and now you can't really go forward with it. You can't capitalize it on it. But then again, if you're MLW, all of a sudden you've got this redemption story laid in your lap for when he does come back. Never lost the title, looking for redemption, that sort of thing. So it's sort of a good news, bad news type of deal.
Yeah, I mean, if it is a long-term injury, then you just kind of have to sit around and hope that he's with you for that long. I mean, so that you get an opportunity to tell that story. Because like we had talked about earlier, both of these guys seem like the type of guys that WWE would be interested in. And I know that they're saying that they're not looking, not even considering indie guys right now. But to me, these just seem like the type of guys that are primed for at least a look, at least a tryout. So, yeah, I mean, if it is a long-term injury and it's something you have to relinquish, it's sad in the sense that you spent so much time building to this story and you hope that you're able to get the redemption, but you just wonder, again, if he'll be there long enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Reverend Keith, back to you. I know you want to discuss it, and one of the big shows that happened this week that we haven't even gotten time to get to yet is the Impact Knockouts Knockdown special from Saturday. And I know when we were talking about this on Twitter, I said, man, I don't know if I'll get time to get to it by the time the show rolls around, Reverend Keith, but I am 1 hour into the show, so I have watched the first 3 or 4 matches. I left off at just at the beginning of Deonna Purrazzo versus Masha Slamovich, so I've seen it up to that point, but I am curious as to your impressions, Reverend Keith, of the Knockouts Knockdown special from Saturday night.
I thought it was a well-worked show. I thought that Gail Kim, Mickey James, and all the others who produced this show, they put together a fine production, and they gave a nice tribute to Shannon Spruill, otherwise known as Daphne, and I just thought that the talent on the program, worked well. The matches were good. Now, since you've only seen up to the match with Deonna and Masha Slamovich, which was a great match, to say the least. I mean, I'm just surprised that Masha Slamovich hasn't been signed by AEW or WWE, because she can really bring it. She has all the makings of a star, from her character, her facial expressions. She tells a good story, and she can go in the ring. And, I mean, the fans love her, and I think she's supposed to be a babyface, but I've seen her on the independent scene as a heel, so she can go both ways. But with that said, would you like for me to go over the card or just stop with Deonna's match?
I'll leave it up to you to decide, Reverend Keith. If you want to go further, I'm not afraid of spoilers. This isn't a show that I'm, sitting on the edge of my seat. I am interested in it for sure, but if you want to give your breakdown of the entire show, I'll let you go and have at it.
Yes, as I promised you throughout the week on Twitter, I wanted to go over it. Now, you discussed the quarterfinals. Now, of the main matches in the quarterfinals, I thought that the Rachel Ellering Lady Frost, which was the show opener, I thought that was the best, simply because each person was fighting for supremacy, so to speak. Rachel Ellering, she's a second-generation wrestler. However, she has a lot to prove, and it shows. And Lady Frost, who is another impeccable talent on the indie scene, she works well in her character. She's a heel. But each of them put together a fine 14-minute match with Rachel Ellering going over. Now, there was a squash in the quarters with Mercedes Martinez defeating Brandy Lauren in a minute 44 seconds. So that set the tone for where they were taking Mercedes. Now, the other two quarterfinal victors was Chelsea Green and Tasha Steele. Awesome Kong was inducted into the Impact Hall of Fame. She gave a tremendous speech. She gave tribute to Daphne as well. Deonna Purrazzo defeated Masha Slamovich in a good 15-minute match, I thought. And Deonna Purrazzo, it's amazing because just like with Britt Baker in AEW, she gets better each time out, and she's becoming more and more confident, more and more arrogant, and it shows. Her character has really come a long way from when she left NXT, and that's another one WWE missed out on. Now, since you said I can go ahead, with your permission, in the semifinals, Tasha Steele defeated Chelsea Green in what I think was undoubtedly the match of the night. In my opinion, these two women fought their darndest, and I mean, it was like a 12-minute match. Tasha Steele, you know, she went to great lengths to put Chelsea away. So, and I think this match really put Tasha Steele on another level. We know that she's just coming out on her own since Kiera Hogan left to go to AEW. And even though she's been teaming with Savannah Evans, it's obvious that not only does Tasha Steele herself, who stated on Twitter, but also Impact as a whole is positioning her for a singles run. And it showed in how she performed in this tournament. She won, and then it led to Mercedes Martinez defeating Rachel Ellering in the other semifinal. They showed good sportsmanship by hugging each other in the end. At the beginning of the match, however, Rachel Ellering showed signs of being of lacking confidence, so to speak. It took her a while to get into the match, and Mercedes Martinez, the ring general that she is, had to lead her through the match, but it still was a good match. And then in the final, of course, Mercedes Martinez defeated Tasha Steele to win the beautiful trophy and to get a title shot against the champion, whoever that may be, coming out of Bound for Glory, whether it's Deonna or Mickie James. The former Iconics, who is now going by the name The Inspiration, will debut in Impact Bound for Glory in 2 weeks on October 23rd. And in the main event, Decay retained their Impact Knockouts tag team titles over the influence of Madison Rayne and Tennille Dashwood. So that's how that went. You know, I thought it was a good production again. Impact is definitely underrated. They have a lot of talent, not only in their women's division, but even on the men's side. So I thought it was a good show. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the first hour was good. I thought the one thing that struck me about Lady Frost was she seemed a little tentative against Rachel Ellering in that it didn't look like she was laying things in as tightly as she could have. But, you know, that comes with experience and, you know, experience being on television, and the more and more she does that, I think that'll come. But so far, I've been impressed. They've really let the matches, you know, sometimes you get into that mindset of quick women's matches. And, you know, historically, that's kind of what we've seen on TV, whether it's WWE at times, even now, doing it, even in Impact. We've got some eras where there's a lot of quick women's TV matches. But even some of the matches that you thought would be quick in that first hour went 10, 15 minutes and really gave each woman an opportunity to shine. So that's what impressed me the most, and I'm looking forward, even though I know who wins now, even though I've been spoiled. I am looking forward to finishing the rest of the show, hopefully tonight after Wrestling Night in America, Reverend Keith.
Good. I think you will enjoy it. I really do. And you were spoiled with your own permission now. You got to remember that with an asterisk.
All right. I got you on that one. Brandon, I don't know what your Impact viewing habits are, if any. But, you know, Mercedes Martinez winning this show that Impact puts on, not really officially a member of the roster to my knowledge, but certainly a free agent coming off a pretty successful NXT run where she was put in pretty prominent positions at times.
Yeah, you know, I used to be a pretty big Impact fan a long time ago, and of course I was watching when when the majority of or a good portion of the wrestling world was watching, when they had an absolutely stacked roster. And again, a bit about 7 or 8 years ago during the Aces and Eights era, and that was very hit or miss, mostly miss. But I think that now, if I were to pick another promotion to start following on a regular basis, given what I hear, just what I've heard on a general consensus from a lot of people whose opinions I respect, Impact seems to have come a long way in being a solid, well-rounded show that entertains. And it's certainly been on my radar in recent months to give it another shot. I think that the addition of AEW Rampage has sort of quelled the momentum it may have had in terms of being added to my weekly list. But I think it's cool that they've put together a women's division that allows them to kind of have a show like this, a tournament, and it's crazy to me that after all these years, somehow that company, everything they've been through too, that company is still trudging along.
Need an extra dose of positivity in your wrestling podcasts? Well, come join me, Alan Forel, over in the Pro Wrest Paradise at PW Torch VIP as we bask on the bright side of wrestling and focus on some of the great matches and shows from around the world, be it the US, Japan, Europe, or Mexico. There's always a place for wrestling's past in the Paradise too, and we've done fun historical shows such as the We Love Liger series, celebrating the glorious career of Jushin Thunder Liger, and our I Was There When shows, where a guest will join me to talk about a classic bout that they were in attendance for. We love variety, and you can expect lots of it at the Pro Wrest Paradise. Detailed PW Torch VIP subscription information and a list of all the VIP benefits is available at pwtorchvipinfo.com. And yes, all VIP podcasts are compatible with popular podcast apps on iPhone and Android devices, or you can stream them directly from our ad-free VIP mobile site. See you in the Paradise.
Reverend Keith, do you have anything else for us tonight?
Yes. My final point of the evening is I wanted to discuss the impending ratings war on Friday night between Tony Khan's AEW and the overrun with WWE. I think that this is good for business. It behooves me that people on social media yesterday were both getting on Tony Khan for his statement saying that, he would actually beat them. He's looking forward to beating WWE with Rampage that first half hour when all competition is good for both companies. And WWE has been in dire need of competition like this for years. Brandon, you know how complacent WWE has been, especially on Raw. And I think this is going to be good for business. And when you think about it, who wins? Greg, we as fans, we as podcasters, we as callers, we as I call myself, a wrestling historian, we're the ones who win with this, no matter who gets the better for that half hour. But I think both shows will bring it. I do believe WWE will win, though, because they have a better opportunity at winning unless Rampage changes the format at the last minute, which Tony Khan could possibly do. What are your thoughts on this impending situation on Friday night?
Well, it's going to be tough because TBS is in more homes than FS1, so that immediately gives AEW a leg up in terms of that, and we'll have to see how the show is stacked. But I think your other point, Reverend Keith, is the most interesting, and it's one I want to broach to Brandon, is, Tony Khan going on social media and saying, hey, we want to win. We want this war. And you have to remember, Tony was a child of the Monday Night Wars, where this sort of thing was frequent, and not just on social media, but on television. I mean, WWE, WCW throwing lobs at each other each and every week, and I just don't understand why all of a sudden people are getting their underwear in a bunch about Tony Khan saying just probably what he's thinking and what most AEW fans are thinking. Like, this is enjoyable. We had WWE dominate for 20 years in this landscape, and it's kind of fun to have that competition back, I think, Brandon. Am I wrong? Is Tony wrong for bringing this up?
No, I love it. I love what Tony did. I love where this is headed, and I don't care if they win or they lose. I love the fact that they are the first promotion since WCW to be able to say with a straight face that they are competition. And maybe it works out in the long run and they overtake Raw. Maybe they don't. I mean, they've won in the demo, and that's important and that's great. But you know, obviously the ultimate victory is overtaking them in the straight up ratings. And I don't know when or if that's going to happen, but I think the ride is fun. I think talking about it is fun. I think watching it play out is fun. I think having Tony Khan in the forefront, being a fans promoter and wanting this so badly and caring about how his promotion comes off and how much they succeed and in what light they succeed and who they're succeeding against, I think it's great for the business. I think that as much as WWE would like to pretend that it's not there, pretend it doesn't exist, and not acknowledge it, the way that they are booking in recent weeks and the last couple of months says that they are aware that someone is biting at their heels for the first time in 20-plus years, and it's great. It's fun. And I love it coming out of AEW, a promotion that's clicking on all cylinders right now.
Reverend Keith, always appreciate your insight and your input each and every week here on Wrestling Night in America. Thanks so much for calling in.
Thank you for taking my call. Have a good week, gentlemen.
Absolutely. You do the same, sir.
You too.
I want to sort of continue on with that AEW theme because we've got an email about AEW. And this is from Dan. He says, "Hi, Greg. Dan here, VIP member from the UK. Firstly, thanks to the Torch for hours of entertainment since I became a VIP member. Your top-shelf analysis has made working from home throughout the pandemic much more tolerable. On to my question. Do you think AEW would benefit from a yearly mega event, e.g. WrestleMania or Starrcade? The 4 pay-per-view a year model does give AEW time to build stories and anticipation, but given AEW's trajectory, would an annual stadium show move AEW to another level, or with the cable specials on the horizon, would it oversaturate the product? Cheers, Dan, a VIP member from Leeds, England." Dan, thank you so much for your email and for being a VIP member. If you are a listener who wants to become a VIP member, pwtorch.com/govip. You'll get all the details about what a VIP membership entails. I think this is a good question. I think with 4 pay-per-views a year, you don't need to make one of them a WrestleMania-like show. I think because there are only 4, it's easier to make them stand out and be major shows on their own. A stadium show, even with all the success AEW is doing right now, I think that's a little lofty of a goal right now. Hey, they might be able to do it, but I would wait a little on that until you're a lot more comfortable you can fill it. I think AEW should continue to try to go into unique arenas like they did in New York at Arthur Ashe Stadium. I'd like to see them continue doing that because that's not something WWE traditionally does. You know, they have their shows and they all kind of look the same, except for maybe WrestleMania or, you know, the Rumble if they're doing it at a stadium or SummerSlam in a stadium. So I think they're doing well enough right now that I don't think they need to change anything, but it could be something to think about down the line. Brandon, what do you think? Should one of their pay-per-views be meant to stand out more than the others?
Yeah, I think that in the beginning there was sort of a push to make All Out be a larger event and perhaps Double or Nothing because it was the first, you know, real pay-per-view under the AEW brand. But lately it's felt as though they're more content with having every show feel like a big show and have the four events feel equal. I don't get the sense that they necessarily need a big standout event quite yet, because I think that they've done really well with the model that they have, and I just don't think that there's a huge need to move away from it until you see that business is sort of dictating the need for it. Mm-hmm. What I do think is interesting is the model that AEW has employed with their pay-per-views, and that Tony Khan is not afraid, even though he's only got 4 pay-per-views per year, to not put the biggest match that he's got in his back pocket on these shows. I think All Out is a really good example where all of us, seemingly in wrestling media, looked at the All Out card and said, man, they would be crazy to main event that show with Kenny Omega versus Christian Cage when they've got all these other matches on the table. Obviously, Adam Page waiting in the wings, CM Punk coming into the company at that point. We knew that Danielson was coming in more or less, though we didn't know how he was going to be involved quite yet. So, and it worked out. I mean, All Out was a great show. Omega and Christian Cage was a good match, not a great match. I did think that their Rampage encounter was the better of the two, but still, it worked because they had that Danielson debut in their back pocket and they knew it. So I think it's really interesting, the strategies that they've chosen to employ with these pay-per-views, knowing that they're going to have such a strong card and that they're so strongly booked from top to bottom that they can get away with not giving everything away at every show and still make it feel like a big event. And that's really important. And it's really cool because it helps them save some of these matches for down the line to make them feel even bigger. Now, while I don't necessarily advocate for them having a big stadium show or anything like that right now, I definitely wouldn't mind seeing them add a fifth pay-per-view. I think that 4 has been a good number. I think 5 may be an even better number to give them that one extra show per year, and then see where it goes from there. I mean, maybe one starts to stand out. Maybe there is a need, like you said, to move to a stadium at a later date. But right now, I like the trend that they have going, but I would be fine with them adding that fifth show.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have if you're AEW. Bottom line, at this point in their
Definitely.
run. So. That's something that they can look forward to and fans can look forward to down the line. I'm sure they won't shy away from it if they're ready to go. Back to the phones. The 615 area code. Sean from Murfreesboro, Tennessee is back with us. Sean, welcome to Wrestling Night in America tonight.
Man, glad you can take my call, guys. Greg, glad you're feeling better, man. You sound fantastic. Love to hear that, man. And Brandon, it's always good to talk to you, man. How you doing tonight, sir?
Yeah, for sure. You too. Not bad. Doing good.
Yeah, so I wanted to say, Greg, your team, the Jags are in good hands. Another, tough loss today, of course, to the Titans, who I do like because, again, I live here in Tennessee. So I am a casual fan of the Titans. But you guys are in good hands. Trevor Lawrence is definitely getting better, by the game. And so I think, in the next couple of years, I definitely think there's good stuff there. It's just going to take, a little more time. So I do feel for you in that sense, but at the same time, Trevor's a good quarterback. And my Packers escaped after Mason Crosby missed 3 field goals in a matter of 5 minutes, but thank goodness kicked the game-winning field goal to win in overtime.
That's the one.
Crazy.
That's the one they'll remember. They won't remember the misses. They'll remember the make. So that's a good sign. But yeah, I mean, look, they've had the Jaguars have been without a real star quarterback for so long. If they win one game this year, but Trevor Lawrence looks like a stud, I'm okay with that. Like you said, this is not their year. This is not the year that they're gunning for. This is a year of development for Trevor Lawrence to make sure he can be the number one pick that he was. And like you said, he's showing more and more signs of that, looking more and more comfortable game by game. So if after game 17 we can sit here and say we have our quarterback of the future, all right, let's start to build around him. And the losses are going to come, but the wins are going to come eventually. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. You get kind of numb after a while. At this point, I'm in that numb stage from all the losing.
Right. But I want to say, Brandon, going to your Ravens, I mean, the Ravens are looking good too, honestly. I mean, they're playing some good football now, and I think Lamar's getting a lot better throwing the ball down the field by game. So I'm actually excited where the Ravens are going to go to. They're in a tough division, of course, but they look pretty good too. I was wondering what you thought about Lamar real quick too, just from what you've seen of him this year.
Yes. So it's been an up and down season in terms of expectations and general performances after losing, every starting running back that the team had, and now working with a hobbled together line of former Pro Bowl running backs who are trying to relive former glory. But Lamar has certainly hoisted the team onto his back and carried them through down performances from the defense in the first 2 weeks of the season. He's made some just incredibly crazy throws that I don't think that he would have made last year, and certainly not in the years prior. He has taken a significant step as a passer. I think it's evident to anybody who watches with an objective eye and not those that are, just hell-bent on calling him a running back. There's a clear big step forward in his passing this year. So, yeah, it's really exciting. And I definitely was, as I was watching that Packers and Bengals game today, I was thanking everything that I know for having Justin Tucker.
Right. No, absolutely. And I wanted to say, Brandon, sorry, Greg, I wanted to throw this out there too, because we were talking about it last week. Brandon, I don't know if you heard that show last week or not, but I've said multiple times I actually did a podcast back in the day. I'm not doing it anymore. My best friend and I were doing a sports podcast for quite a while, and we had to stop for just other issues while it was going on. But Brady, to me, I know it's a bad day to say it because, he supposedly threw for 400 yards and dominated or whatever. I think Brady's overrated. I really do. I watch a lot of games just because I've been a football fan forever, and he's great. Again, I said last week he's great. He's to me top 3 for sure. But the rings don't do everything for me. Like Peyton Manning is my GOAT in my personal humble opinion. Who would you do if you had the best quarterback of all time? Do you go with everybody else to say Brady, or do you have somebody else that you look toward?
Man, I'm starting to err toward Brady simply because of the performances now across two teams showing that. I think for me, being someone who's from New England, who lives in New England, who has a family full of Patriots fans, friends who are Patriots fans, and someone who's never liked the Patriots, I have kind of watched Brady and gritted my teeth and bared it because it's sort of like, it's constantly being rubbed in your face here. And so I've grown a new appreciation for Brady since he moved away from New England and went down to Tampa. It felt to me like in order to really cement himself, he needed to have that run on his own without Bill Belichick and prove that it wasn't Belichick that was sort of making him who he was. And I think that he's been able to do that in Tampa. But I also do acknowledge that, man, does he have a talented team surrounding him. I mean, on paper, one of the most talented NFL rosters that we've seen in a long, long time. The receivers are incredible. Obviously, they've got the running game going now with Leonard Fournette, who seems to be, finding his old self again. So, yeah, I mean, I think I go with Brady, but I'm not one of those people who's going to shut down an argument for someone else.
We're now on Patreon. By popular demand, you can now support us directly through Patreon. Go to patreon.com/PWTorchVIP. We have 3 tiers, including an entry level. Tier 1, that takes the ads and plugs away. You can have the VIP versions of the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast, Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Shows, and the PW Torch Daily Cast. That's 14 podcasts per week, but with the ads and plugs edited out. Plus, you get the VIP after shows. Don't be left out anymore from those for just $4.99 at patreon.com/PWTorchVIP. We also have a second tier and a third tier where you can upgrade to get other VIP content, including other VIP podcasts and the PW Torch newsletter, the current ones and 20 years ago version. So go check it out, patreon.com/PWTorchVIP.
No, and that's to say, Peyton for me did it first with 2 teams. Peyton had many neck. Brady's been, thankful that he has not had a lot of big injuries, and I give him, that's good. I mean, he's worked on his body for a long time. Peyton did too. Just he had unfortunately a lot of bad offensive lines early in his career, and it haunted him later on. And so, to me, I just look at what Peyton did. He led those offenses by himself. Nobody knew who Adam Gase was in Denver. Nobody knew who the heck he was. Like, Peyton ran those teams and set records at 38, which Brady might do this year just because their schedule to me is absolute garbage. But going into that, I don't know. I thought not to go into this too long a rant, but I thought the referees gave Brady the Super Bowl last year. I thought some of the calls were abysmal in that game. Their defense gave Mahomes no time to throw whatsoever. And I just think, I don't know. Brady's great, but I think Peyton's better. But anyway, I will get off that because I could talk about that again all day long. And that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about awesome wrestling. I wanted to talk, well, Reverend Keith, I loved his insight on the Impact stuff. And I know, Brandon, you don't get to, really see it much. But I did want to ask you, Greg, for sure about, going back to Deonna. I told you back in, probably 6 months ago, maybe a year ago that, like Reverend said, I think NXT missed the boat, and Vince missed the boat on Deonna for sure. I mean, I loved her in Ring of Honor as a white meat babyface, and she's really turned it around from what I've gotten to see. I haven't seen everything, but I've gone back and watched the matches. The last one was Melina, and now, I'm really debating if I do want to get Bound for Glory because I really do want to see her against Mickie James. I'm glad to see Mickie getting some stuff, just producing, doing stuff in Impact. So I'm curious to see just what you thought of Deonna, her whole run in Impact. When do you think she might lose the title? Like, do you think Mercedes will come up, win this, now that she won this? And do you think she'll maybe beat Deonna and then – or because I think I want to see Deonna, as good as she's been as a heel, I want to see her as a babyface because I think she's even better as a babyface. I loved her in ROH doing her babyface character. I thought she was really good. I mean, she's obviously good in the ring. What do you think about her? When do you think she might lose the title, first of all?
That's a good question. There doesn't seem to be very many Impact knockouts on her level that are baby faces. Like, I'm partial to Jordynne Grace, but, she's kind of in that tag team with Rachel Ellering now. Doesn't seem like they're readying her for anything major. Mercedes Martinez, I think she's got the credibility to do it, but I don't know what her Impact status is enough to know whether or not they would want to put the title on her. Yeah, Deonna's Impact run has been fantastic. Her brawl with Mickie James at Mickey's Farm was fun a couple weeks ago. I think she just lost a lot of confidence in NXT. I mean, you could see it when she did make the rare appearances, even on Monday Night Raw. She just, I don't know. She just looks so small. And I don't mean in stature. I mean just like the presentation of her. And that's not all her fault. When they're throwing her out there without any kind of context, that's what's going to happen. But the times that she did get a chance in NXT, it didn't look like she had a ton of confidence. And then she gets to Impact, and boy, it's like a flip of a switch. I mean, she is just a whole other wrestler. And it's amazing what can happen when a company puts the confidence in you, that they put the power behind you, and you are the star of that division. And she certainly is the star of the Knockouts division. So I think a lot of that is just her regaining that confidence, and she's been able to show against a variety of opponents in Impact Wrestling that she is probably the best technical wrestler, the best wrestler in the Knockouts division right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm because Brandon, did you get to see her stuff when she was in ROH? Did you get to see any of that beforehand when she first was younger?
So I've seen a little bit of her work. I was going to bring this up. I obviously saw, what she did in NXT and the very few opportunities there. But I actually saw her work a couple of times locally. We've got a promotion here in Maine called Limitless Wrestling that has done a lot of great things for the wrestling scene in Maine, really revived it to the point that, they're back up and running now, post, the shutdown days of the pandemic. And they're doing great. I mean, they regularly sell out venues, and they've been able to bring in big talent. Cody Rhodes, MJF, Darby Allin, Jeff Cobb came through. Tessa Blanchard, Deonna Purrazzo. So we've had our share of big names come through, and Deonna came through a few times, and I was impressed, and I was more so than anything, I was sort of surprised that WWE couldn't find a space for her. It seems like when you go to an indie show, when you go to a show, an event that's not on television, that doesn't have a television product, the guys and gals that are sort of ready for TV and that have worked TV before, they sort of jump off the page at you. And she's a character who definitely jumped at the few times that I had seen her in person. And I think I saw her work with Tessa twice, I believe. And in both outings, you know, say what you will about Tessa, there's certainly a host of character concerns there without question. But they worked a really strong professional match that could have been put on TV for any major company in the United States. AEW, Impact, ROH, WWE, you name it. Like, that could have been a TV match for any of those companies, and people would have talked highly of it. I think that WWE absolutely missed the boat on her, and I don't know if Impact is the ultimate landing spot for her, but I would love to either see her get another shot in the WWE Women's Division or perhaps in AEW, who certainly, you know, we talk about AEW being loaded with talent, but they can still use some heavy hitters in the Women's Division. As much as I don't think I would want to see, you know, major players added on the men's side because they're just so loaded, they definitely have room for some big names on the women's side.
Yeah, I totally agree. I definitely a fan of Deonna. I want to see her. I mean, keep her in Impact as long as she wants to be there. But yeah, if she can go to AEW, I would love to see that. And going back to the Ryan brought up the TBS title. I really am not looking forward to that. I really don't think they needed another women's title. They're struggling to have the title they do now. I don't know why building another title for the women is really going to help right now. But at the same time, I mean, I'm willing to let it play out. I mean, they just announced it, so we'll see what happens. But I'll let you can talk about that in a minute too. But I wanted to go. I mean, you guys probably heard the post show with Zach and Alex on Friday after SmackDown. So I won't go into the whole rant. But it just, to me, the Queen's Crown is just already a joke already. It's an absolute joke. They had Liv Morgan. I told them defeat Carmella. I don't know how many times, you know, with Carmella doing the stupid beautiful woman can't hit my face, all this stuff. And they have Carmella beat Liv Morgan in 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. It's like, I just don't understand what WWE is trying to do. And I'm worried about Shayna. I don't even know if she'll win because, like some people have said, I don't know if the Queen gimmick is good for her. I know she's the Queen of Spades, you know, theoretically. But I don't know if that works for her or if it's gonna push her to that next level. I just want her to be that badass character. And I'm worried they're going to have Piper Niven. I'm with Todd. Piper Niven win that. Not that Piper Niven's not talented. I like Piper a lot. I think she's super talented in the ring, and just what she's doing, Vince is just already starting to ruin her. And so, what do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to have Shayna win? And what did you think of Liv losing horribly and Toni Storm not building her in any way at all and losing in 2 minutes as well? What did you guys think about all that?
This is actually going to be our next topic, so let's dive into it now. Queen's Crown, the first round matches. We saw Zelina Vega defeat Toni Storm on SmackDown. Carmella defeat Liv Morgan. On Raw this coming week will be the first round on the Raw side of the bracket. Doudrop versus Natalya and Shayna Baszler versus Dana Brooke. So, Brandon, I think Shayna Baszler has a good chance to win this. I think it gives her... it can continue with her that Killer Instinct character and give her a leg up when she debuts on SmackDown. Is there the chance that they do something screwy? Absolutely. I would have flipped the results on SmackDown. I didn't like either result there, mostly because it built to yet another Zelina Vega versus Carmella match. I mean, that was the one part that was so insulting to me. I mean, how do you do that? But then, you have Toni Storm, who you just recently introduced as this wild child of the 80s, which I don't even think she was born in the 80s. I think she was born in the 90s. I mean, she's really young. So it's just the whole thing was weird. And then, I think we're getting to that era. We're sort of taking a step back. A lot of the women's TV matches are going back to being short. And we saw that on SmackDown this week with both of these matches. So that's an unfortunate setback, I think, for the women's division. But, Brandon, what did you think of the matches, the results on SmackDown? And, do you think Baszler should be the odds-on favorite to win this?
Yeah, a bunch to pick apart here. So first, dislike the result of both matches. I thought that Toni Storm's promo introducing this new side of her character was just dreadful. I mean, overly scripted, completely unnatural, sounded like she was reciting lines because she was, doesn't fit her natural charisma at all. Just awful stuff. And I think they've already done a ton of damage to her. Thought it was a really cool opportunity when they introduced her on SmackDown to get a major player in the division. And already it seems like she has been defined down to the Carmella, Liv Morgan, the Zelina Vega level. She's certainly better than that. And a lot of those women are better than that too, but that's just what they've been slotted at. And every time they start to book one of them out of that level, they screw it up. And you saw that happen with Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan was on an impressive track. She'd been winning matches. The crowd was getting behind her. And what do? You resort back to 50-50 booking. You get Carmella her win back. Most recent one is always the one that sticks and the one that matters. Liv Morgan is out of the tournament now, and Carmella moves on. It's just bad. It's another offensive night in a long string of poor booking in the WWE Women's Division, where they struggle significantly with anything that is not the major title picture. As far as the Queen's Crown tournament, I'm of two minds of this. On one hand, from a pure who needs to win this perspective, of course, it's Shayna Baszler. She's got a ton of momentum. She's got her great character back. She's the, sort of the hard-hitting bully that she was in NXT, and I think that naturally lends itself to her coming out of this with a win. My fear, though, is that much like the King of the Ring tournament in recent years, whoever does win the tournament is going to be saddled with this awful Queen gimmick. And I don't think that they have enough nuance to present Shayna Baszler in a way in which it doesn't come off phony and ridiculous and annoying, in the same way that King Corbin was just ridiculous. So, yes, of course, Shayna is the Queen of Spades. And if they allow her to just, sort of pump up that nickname and bring it back to the forefront, then okay. Fine, no big deal. But to me, the more likely of scenarios is that she has to start wearing a robe and carrying a scepter and wearing a crown. And I just don't think that we're going to be able to take Shayna Baszler seriously if she's forced to do something like that. So to me, if that's the direction that they're going to go with this tournament and the winner is going to be saddled with that gimmick, it seems like it's built for Carmella to win. And Carmella already gets this win over Liv Morgan. Seems like she should realistically probably get the win over Zelina Vega as well. And then